Hello, 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 Tampa Bay listeners and beyond. You're listening to Everything PEO, Money Talk 1010 AM. I'm Evan Collard, and oh my goodness, on this sunny Florida afternoon, it is good to be back. 14 weeks out of the studio. It's like riding a bike all over again, but we're going to get through it today, and we've got a great hour. So many things have happened during the summer off. It's, unfortunately for our loyal listeners, Lionel Francis will not be coming back due to some family scheduling conflicts and just life, I'm going to go it alone here for a few weeks, but we've got some awesome guests in the studio with us. Florida's had another hurricane. We went through the show for weeks and weeks about Hurricane Ian and all the contractors flooding the state and really all the, hurdles that come with that. We got hit last weekend. Luckily, wasn't nearly as bad, but, I feel like it's Hurricane Ian 2.0. I'm not even going to try and pronounce the name, but Idalia. It's here, it's prevalent, and there's a lot of contractors over these next few weeks that have got a lot to learn, with the new Senate bill and having your own EPLI with 25 employees or more, and just, really cracking down on, illegal workers. That's what this show is really all about, to get the educational content out in a big way. And, that's every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Everything PO will be here to assist. But today, we are proud to have Chris Sullivan and Meredith Burns with Sons Insurance in the studio. Really great to have you both here. And for those who missed our previous segment with Sons back in January, we had David Brodsky, Chief Underwriting Officer, really coming in talking everything from insurance, underwriting, workers' comp, what that looks like, what that process is. And for those that aren't aware, Sons Insurance really is, in my opinion, the premier provider of workers' compensation coverage, not only for PEOs, but staffing companies, transportation, and really just large employers nationwide. Chris Sullivan, Director of Risk Management with Sons Insurance, over 30 years in the business, also a family man, kind of juggling all aspects of life work, received his Bachelor of Science in Industrial Risk Management with Eastern Kentucky, and has a passion really to help insureds with kind of a common sense and practical approach and foster an environment of risk awareness and control. So important for these business owners. And my special guest, Meredith Burns, this has been, we both kind of came up in this business 20 years ago at about the same time. I remember my very first PEO visit was at a PEO, called ACC. Who's no longer here, but she was coming up as an underwriter. I was coming up in sales, and, we've just kind of kept in touch over the last 20 years as our career and journeys have blossomed, but she's been with Sons now since 2015, executive underwriter there, and, I'm just excited to get into it today, really. There's, risk management and loss control, plays a very critical role in this whole workers' comp piece. And I think there's really no two better guests to have in the studio to get into it. Tell me, Chris, obviously I've got a list of topics today, but tell our listeners a little bit about yourself.
Well, appreciate you having us on. It's a great honor. And, working in risk management for decades now, you can look at every single year, there's about $40 billion that companies are cost every year in injuries. So it is a big deal, and bad things can happen to good companies. So risk management, loss prevention, loss control, it's all about preventing the injuries from happening. And if they do happen, then you got to have the mitigation strategies to lower the cost associated with those claims. But, it's funny thinking about this topic. When my kids were growing up, they kept asking me, what do you do, Dad? And I'm in the PEO world. I'm a risk manager. I'm wearing lots of hats. I'm customer service. I'm working with sales. I'm running a claims team. I'm doing the underwriting for the carrier. But you can't explain that to a 9-year-old. So I said, just tell them I'm in insurance. So they'll get that. So one night, one of the neighbor dad calls me and he says, hey, can you sell me a life insurance policy? And I had to explain to him what my risk management role was. So, but no, I've been doing this pretty much for my adult life, actually doing what I graduated in college doing. So
That's
hanging in
rare
there.
these days. I mean,
It is.
there's more folks with a degree working at Taco Bell than ever. I think it's, you feel like you got to go to college. And at 18 years old, I certainly didn't know, what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So kudos to you to having gone down that path, stuck with it, and really kind of, ruled the day, cleaning up in the business. Good for you. I liked your analogy there a minute ago because I often say workers' comp is kind of like a craps table. You're rolling the dice in Vegas. No matter how safe you are, no matter how much training you do, it's really even the best employer can get buried with an unlucky claim or getting. We looked at a case this week where since 2006 they've only had one claim, but that claim was a car accident where the work vehicle got rear-ended and all four employees in the car were injured, six-figure claims on multiple, employees. And next thing you know, that they're out of luck. They're forced into the PEO space. So, I'm really excited to kind of get into that. Meredith, let's move it over to you. So tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and, kind of getting your start in the business.
Yeah, I actually kind of fell into the business through a temp staffing company myself back in 2002 with ACC, and then worked my way through the different departments. So I got to do a little bit of claims interaction, some payroll, some client relations, and really just got a good idea for the benefit that a PEO is for all size companies and the additional protections that they can provide them, whether it be loss control and risk management or along with HR services and stuff. So and through working with a PEO that Sons had previously insured, I came over to Sons and started working for the carrier to provide those services for the PEO. So it's been a nice little path.
Sure, sure. And we all have found our own way in this space. And although I didn't pick it up in college, essentially getting in the PEO space was my third job in my adult life. And, fast forward 22 years later, I'm glad I took that turn and it's been really good to me. Just hearing ACC really makes the hair on my arm stand up. And
Sure.
Think about kind of that original Rat Pack, if you will, that original crew, not only of underwriters, but of sales reps, and how many of them are still in this business. I mean, you really do kind of get into insurance and become a lifer.
You do.
Whether you span on underwriting or on claims management or mitigating risk or sales, there's so many of them that we're still connected with. Thank God for social media, right? It keeps us very informed. But we've had Mike Murray on the show. We've had Kelly Anderson on the show. And really, we all got that original start at ACC.
Back at ACC.
Yeah. I remember going to that first Christmas party, and George Bouchon, who's no longer with us, but he was the owner of the PEO at the time, had brought up his very first client, had brought up his CPA, which was his original CPA, all those years later. And then my mentor in the business, Jason Crawford, as, quote unquote, one of the better brokers there. And so it was just, it kind of blew my mind, and that really opened the doors to this business. And, if you're loyal to it, it can be loyal back. It's really been a great business, I think, for all of us.
For sure.
So Chris, imagine we've got obviously listeners in the Tampa Bay area and beyond, and some of them may be hearing for PEO for the very first time. So imagine we've got your son on the line, and you're trying to really kind of define that for those who are unfamiliar with risk management, loss control. And I know we kind of touched on this a little bit, but really, what role does it play in workers' comp insurance?
Well, if you take the PEO model and you look at it from a hierarchy, you've got claims management, you've got underwriting, you've got loss control, you've got financial wherewithal to run the program. So you have to have all these elements that are similar to an insurance company. And I look at a PEO as a mini insurance company. So part of that is you have an obligation to work with these clients and say, hey, I'm going to partner with you. You're going to do your part. We'll give you the resources, and we can lower your experience mod. We can bring your frequency down. We can help you. But it's still the obligation of the client site. They're in control of their employees. So the way I looked at it is you can go work with a hazardous group, and you can still have very good success with claims and lowering frequency if they had the right attitude. And I looked at that every time. If I was working for FCCI and then I got into the PEO world, when I would consult with all these different companies, and that's the beauty of a PEO, is you get to see all these different industries. and you get to have access to these really cool processes in manufacturing and construction and hospitality. But every time I saw somebody with a great attitude that wanted to help themselves, I never saw it fail. So if somebody has like, that employee's stupid, or you can't coach people, they're just going to do stupid things, that's on management, and they need to correct that. If somebody said, I'm going to get better, and I'm going to do what you say, and I'm going to take these resources and work it, it worked every time.
Yeah, no, and that really is a mindset shift that unfortunately we've got to get through to more and more business owners. There's too many of them that look at it like, well, that's what I got workers' comp for. I just send them to the clinic every time. I want to wash my hands of it. And I really wish, and I know Sons does a great job at this, and a lot of the PEOs you work with, having David in here back in January, it was really how we kind of mold these business owners together. But that's something here at PEO Advisors that we're always advocating for. Take an interest in this thing. I mean, imagine if every business owner would go to the doctor's appointment with their injured worker, hear what the light duty recommendations are, go to those post follow-up visits, because if and when they still say their back hurts or I'm not capable, well, just at the appointment last week, you said this. But oftentimes there just is not that accountability from the business owner. And if and when they're taught the right way on this stuff, it's amazing how much faster the claims close, the injured workers get back to work. They don't want to sit around and count staples, for very much longer. Light duty is not a fun process. I actually had a painting company years ago that the injured worker was back to work for 3 years, but he would never go to that last visit and say he was pain-free. He would always, I've got an ache, I've got this, and so it stayed open. The claim on their loss run report for 3 years, even though he was back to work. And it was just that one last step. And that was when I really opened my eyes. And I told the business owner, I said, go to the next visit. Be there, be present. If he came to work every day and painted houses for the last 2 months, I think he's prepared and at a point where he could probably go to that visit and say, I'm pain-free. And so just that little bit of molding goes a long, long way.
Man, it's a partnership. You work closely with the PEO as a client. There's so many things that a business owner has to deal with, and there's so many obligations, and there's only so many hours in the day. So they need a support mechanism like a good PEO that can back them up and be their back office. They can be out there executing what they do on a regular basis. But when they're there, they can do it safely. They can have safe work practices. They can have their foreman training people and documenting it so it's actually been done. And there's some good things they can do once they get, a little breathing room. And that's what a PEO can provide.
Yeah.
And the help isn't just going to come from the PEO. It's also going to come from the carrier. At Sons, we have Chris and we have his team. And so, once you do partner with the PEO, it's not just you. You've got the PEO that's looking out to make sure your business runs as well as it can so it can be profitable for them. Then you have the carrier looking out for the PEO and their clients, making sure that they're running as profitably as they can. So now you've got these two large organizations that are invested in the way your company runs and the safety of your employees. And so it helps take some of that off the business owner and allows him to just deal a little bit more directly with his employees.
Yeah. They're really, was doing it as long as we all have. And, I was kind of doing the measuring stick before we came on air. Combined, there's 70 years of PEOs and insurance. I know. I'm starting to feel old by the minute. When I did the marketing for the show this week, I said, oh, geez. But there really isn't a how-to book. And how many of these business owners do we come across? And I don't mean this any sort of way. It's just what it is, where they're not necessarily seasoned business owners, whether they married into it or divorced into it, or, unfortunately, a sibling passed away and they took over and had to jump in and take the reins. There isn't that how-to book on how to be an efficient business owner. And when you're spiraling down payroll for the first time, claims, policies, rent, branding, logo work. I mean, sometimes it's just a tornado that just spins and spins and spins, and you're getting hit with this thing all the time. And, Mark Cuban has this famous line, some of these businesses, they get lost in R&D and the best logo and the best this, but without clients, you have nothing. And that's really the elephant in the room when you start this business is, above anything else, you've got to go out and find clients and do it efficiently and in a safe way. So, well, we've only got a couple seconds here before break. We've got so much coming back with Merida and Chris. Stick around. All right. We are back. See, I told you, folks, it's like you get in here, you start talking shop. This is all, like we know, like the back of our hand, and next thing you know, breaks here. So, it was funny. I was on LinkedIn today, kind of scouring the web, and we always do that a little bit. Aaron Cornicker, executive producer, Eric, my partner. It takes a small village to get this thing on. It really isn't lights, camera, action. So everyone's always just looking for good content. And I saw my first AI case, right? And it was, the EEOC, Equal Employment Opportunity, came in, and it was a tutor that got caught using AI to help her students. Right, and then there was a suit for $365,000 against her, and I guess she lost. Sounds like maybe it was one of those liberal states. Not going down that path. Not a political show, but technology's been a beast. It's really been changing the game for I think every industry, really, if you're utilizing it right. So, and David had hit a little bit on that, kind of back in January that. In a perfect world, you may get to the point where every case doesn't need that human touch, right? If it sits that perfect, it's under a 125 mod, it's perfect loss rate, it's this. But tell me, how can technology and data really be leveraged to support, safety, above and beyond underwriting?
Back in the day, loss control, when we started out, was boots on the ground. That was it.
Yep.
You could do some telephone calls, but in order to see people, in order to affect any sort of change in their company, you had to be in front of them. And with all these new technologies coming out, like our risk management center that we're able to use, we can, through the PEOs, assign safety videos to watch, tests to take for their employees. They can assign that out through. So it allows, in those instances where they don't need somebody on their job site, where it's not that much of an issue, but they may need some training, it gives you an opportunity to allow them to do that. And you can track their involvement, you can track what they've done, and it allows you to see that they're taking it seriously and they're taking in the information, and then that can allow you to focus physically on other job sites where it's a little bit more hazardous and it needs a little bit more hands-on.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, we were just kind of talking about this right before break about, these business owners are wearing so many hats. And yes, it's amazing that the PEO can take a lot of that back office off of them. But when you start to claim, spiral into claims, whether it's unemployment or workers' comp, and then the hearings and the mediations and the doctors and the follow-ups. We had a gentleman on, Tobin Robeck, in December, and he's co-founder of Construction Casualty Insurance, a PNC shop down in St. Pete, but he had built an AI tool called CompCorrect. Is this anything you're familiar with? Mm-mm. It's fairly new, but it's kind of getting its way out there, and it's an AI tool to help these business owners where your light duty notice pops up, their back to work notice pops up, there's a doctor visit and it helps these business owners manage the claimants in that process. And it sounds, it's hitting its, way through every market, really. It was kind of a funny story. He said the thought of this tool, right, that he was building, they put, I think it was like 50 or 60,000 away for it, and 2 years later they were $1 million into this project.
Oh, wow.
And it was just to the point where it's almost like a monthly subscription per employee that you sell it to the employer and then integrate it. It talks to the carriers, and it has something like a guarantee, like we'll keep your loss pick, and your CTR is down by 50%, or some slogan like that he's really pushing it. So I can see, these tools being out there, but to see the carriers adopting it, that's huge. That's huge.
Yeah, there's analytics that we get now that back in the day we had to create ourselves. And we would spend hours and hours just to review one client as a PEO per se. Now we have tens of thousands of clients within our insureds, and we have all this access to live data at our fingertips. So the analytics alone of what's advanced over the years is just phenomenal for us. But I'm still an old school guy. I like creating relationships and face-to-face meetings. There's nothing better than going out and meeting with an insured face-to-face. You can talk to somebody for 3 years on a Teams meeting, but then when you see them, it's like, yeah, finally we get to meet you. So I think that piece of it, really never goes away. I think COVID emphasized how much we need to be in relationships and to see each other and to communicate face-to-face. We actually have an app with our safety guys that they can walk around a plant and they can show them everything via video, and it records the entire thing. Then we can go back and review it and make recommendations. So we really don't even have to be on site if we're going to be visiting a manufacturing plant. But if you are on site, you get to see other things, you get to meet people. It's just like a whole different experience. But there is a part of technology that can make a lot easier and more efficient.
Yeah. It's funny your take on that, Chris, because I think a lot of folks you may talk to would say if COVID proved anything, it proved that you don't have to do the in-person any longer, right? I think Zoom and all those platforms shot through the roof. I think it proved to a lot of employers that you can run a successful business without necessarily brick and mortar. They can perform at home. But I'm kind of like you, I built, PEO advisors, with my partner, Eric, and largely under the mindset of in-person wins the race. And even if you're the guy that took the time to take one day out of the office, drive down to West Palm, 4 hours each way, but you're the one that actually took that time to come on site, just that alone will be the tipping point, right? If it's being juggled between two, who made the effort? But I agree, when we're signing these accounts up, we're prepping them within 90 days. There's going to be a site visit. They're going to come out with a clipboard. They're going to do that walkthrough. And I think that's one thing that should still stay in the market, because they're going to show you on the drone video what they want you to see, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Even with roofers bidding roofs now. Like we had one that didn't even have to get up there anymore. Just did the whole bid on the roof, flow this thing around. But then the surprises came. It missed a few things. It didn't do that in-depth of the walkthrough. So I think that definitely hits home. I mean, how do you think it helps Suns kind of creating safety-minded cultures? I mean, do you think there's an element there with the tech that it sends the alerts, it stays in front more than the human element? Or do you think still kind of picking up that phone and getting with them?
Well, it's funny because I have a loss control guy that worked for me, and he said he went to Georgia Tech. He's, big engineer degree, and he decided to go into safety, and all his buddies were like, "You're what? You're doing what?" So one day he found out that all these YouTube videos are out there, and you can get a YouTube video on anything. You want to repair anything, or safety is the same thing. It's out there. And it's true. You can go out and research in 20 minutes, and you can have 5 different resources on a particular safety item. The thing is people aren't doing it. So he's all worried. He told his wife, "I'm going to have to find another job because all this stuff is available, and that's what I'm giving them when I go out." And he said after 25 years of that, he realized they're not doing it. So sometimes you got to spoon feed them or get them excited about it. And that's one of the things with our risk management center. We try to make it really easy to use. Anybody can go in there. They can search the document they're looking for. They can download it. They can put their logo on it, all the videos and access. It's all under one platform. Mm-hmm. So once somebody gets a little bit of excitement going, they become a champion for that platform. But if you remind them of it every 6 months, they go, "Oh yeah, what was my login again? I need to go look at that." And you realize these people have a lot to do. I have a lot of empathy for business owners and managers and directors, because they have full jam-packed days, and they're not sitting there on a Tuesday afternoon going, I have nothing to do. I think I'll go look at that risk management center. So we understand that, and we try to make it as easy as possible to get these tools. And certainly the advancements in technology is making it easier in that regard.
Yeah. I think almost to a fault at times. I really say that because same thing. I work hard, right? And then when I get home, it's time to be with the kids. I don't sit there and necessarily geek out on this stuff all night long. And between running the business and being a father and being present in life and being in that moment, there's only so many hours in the day. But even some of the PEOs I've noticed, obviously PEO advisors, we broker with, dozens of PEOs, and there's just, several hundred of them out there. Some of them have even, I think, because of this tech and how easy it is to send the videos and things like that, they've stopped almost having their own risk manager, right? It's to the point, well, we made the formal submission, the PEO approved it, so let's go ahead and enroll it. And I think that's a critical step. That's a dangerous, slippery slope to be in the sense of, yes, the carrier may have approved it, but especially if you're in a large deductible program, that doesn't mean you should just necessarily forego that step, right? I mean, what do you think, Meredith?
Absolutely. You need to be as involved in that still. They're going to need the help. That's why they're with the PEO. They need the help of loss control. And even if it's not necessarily coming from the PEO, if it's coming through the carrier. One of the things, even if they don't have people on the ground with the technology behind the scenes, they can still look at what's driving my losses. Am I having falls from height? Am I having a lot of motor vehicle accidents? And that can help them kind of reassess the industries that they want to look at, reassess the type of clients that they want to look at. And then that way, if they don't want to be out in the field, they just want to maybe adjust their underwriting to fit more of what they're comfortable with. They can use those back-end analytics to help them focus on the safe areas for them.
Sure. Well, you're listening to Everything PEO on Money Talk 1010 AM. In the studio today, Chris Sullivan, Director of Risk Management at Sons Insurance, and Meredith Burns, an executive underwriter with Sons since 2015, really kind of going through everything in the risk game of insurance. So let's flip that scope now. I kind of said there's a way with the technology you can get a little lazy on it. How does it, if you've got a proactive business owner and they're proactive in their risk management programs, how can that, impact the cost at the end of the day?
Yeah, it's a huge difference. If you think about it, you look at the mod as a scorecard, you're talking about a 4-year proposition that doesn't go away overnight. So you can be paying for sins down the road that happened 3 years ago. And again, like I said earlier, bad things happen to good companies. So everybody's not exempt from an injury. And even though you're not working at heights, we've seen catastrophic claims that happen right on the ground. And the more you interject this culture of safety and have all of your employees buying in, you eventually get it to where it comes up from the bottom. It has to start at the top. You have to have an owner that believes in it and drives it, and you got to have supervisors that aren't going to roll their eyes when he walks away. And then the employees are going to realize, okay, one, these guys care about me, which is very important these days. Mm-hmm. If you're trying to attract a good employee, having a good, safe operation is one way to do it, because we want everybody to go home at the end of the day to their families. We don't want them making a trip to the ER. And it's just that simple to have that safety culture, but it's got to be built. It's got to be real. You can't fake it. I have a guy that has so many credentials as a loss control rep for me. His resume is 5 pages long, and 3 of the pages are all the credentials that he has. Yeah, he's got a lot of credentials behind him. But when he goes out there, he keeps it real. He talks, in language they can understand. He knows just about every industry, and he's a very helpful resource. We took away the word inspection. We make it as, hey, I'm coming out and I'm going to be a resource for you. And we don't want to look like an OSHA guy. The truth is, when OSHA started in the 70s, it was necessary. There was a lot of bad things happening, and employers were not treating people properly. So we've come a long way since then. But there's still ignorance out there. There's an operation one time, a steel erector, dropping people, and we said, we're not going to write you unless you hire a full-time safety director. You have to have somebody that's qualified and works in this industry. And they said, no problem. So the next time I went out, he goes, here's my safety director. And I looked at him, and he was, a grumpy old dude. And he introduced himself, and I said, you have the same last name? He goes, yeah, that's my dad. He taught me everything I know about steel erection. And I was like, oh, this isn't going to end well. Because every bad habit that he had, he gave it to his son, and now he's bringing dad back out of the mothballs. And I was like, okay, we're done with these guys. But if you had the right attitude, it works every time.
And Chris mentioned mod, and that does play into the cost. Mod and loss ratio are 2 things that a lot of carriers and PEOs look at when they're underwriting. And so if they're allowing their claims and stuff to run crazy, or actually in the other way, if they control their claims and keep the mod and loss ratio lower, they're going to have a better opportunity for better coverage, for better costs, instead of ending up potentially with a state fund or, where it's not an easy thing to get coverage and then it's hard to get out of. So that's one of the main things about keeping those claims contained is access to better coverages.
Yeah, that's what one of the huge and best feature benefits to PEOs, in my opinion. And for any of the listeners that aren't familiar with Experience Mod, this is a long algorithm that I'll never master, but basically it's almost like your credit score for insurance, right? And as Chris mentioned, it stays in the closet for 4 years because for the first year, it does not affect anything. And then it looks at a 3-year window of how your claims perform. And over time, if you have more claims paid out than premium earned, your ratings, increases. And anything above a 1.0 rating, if it was a 115, for example, that'd be a 15% surcharge. Same example, over time, you're paying more premium than you're paying out in claims, your score can decrease. A 0.85 under a 1.0, for example, that'd be a 15% discount that you can qualify. And so I know it's tough for business owners, you're just throwing all these, acronyms at them, but that's the big one to keep, kind of the eye on the ball. And the great thing about PEOs, although they do factor into it, in the standard market, you have to go off of it. Where a PEO is going to look at a trend, how you're performing, how your payroll's running. That case that I highlighted kind of earlier in the show, they had 1 accident since 2006. Now, granted, it was an auto accident. 4 people were injured all at the same time. But in his loss ratio, right, simple formula here, premium versus claims and payout, was upside down by 400%. And although every standard market declined them, there was a line out the door of PEOs willing to write them. I think everyone saw it in the big picture. You can't, getting T-boned at a red light, really isn't the business owner's fault. And outside of that, they had performed pretty darn well. And so keeping that in perspective is really what makes PEOs most effective.
Yeah, on the mod too, there are opportunities that the businesses could miss out on because of high mods as well. So aside from the cost of business, there are certain large GCs that won't do business with contractors that have a mod over a 1.0.
Yep.
So, if they want those large contracts, government contracts, things like that with the larger builders, they have to be able to control that as well.
Yeah, we had a case last year where the guy actually used the PEO's mod, right? He was trying to get on the Anheuser-Busch plant out in Nebraska, and his mod was above that. We put him with a PEO under a 1.0 factor, and ultimately, was able to kind of break down that door, for him. So that was kind of neat. But it's just one of the many feature benefits in the PEO space. How are you performing? How are things looking recently? Do you have a positive trend? If so, many doors can open up for you. So, well, we've only got one more segment left, but please stick around with Chris and Meredith. We still got a lot more coming at you. All right. We're back on with Chris and Meredith. I'm talking to the live stream. I'm talking on the microphone. We're all over the place in here. Well, for those who didn't catch the first segment, in studio today, Chris Sullivan, Director of Risk Management at Sons Insurance, and we have Meredith Burns. I want to say Barclay every time. Meredith Burns, Executive Underwriter with Sons since 2015, kind of going through everything risk management, loss control, all of the above. Let's get right back into it. We only got, about 15 minutes here. So Chris or Meredith, whoever wants to take this one, tell me, really, when you get into it, how does loss control create kind of a comfort zone, if you will, regarding the underwriting submissions, especially for the hazardous, businesses, codes, all the above?
You had mentioned the difference between standard market and PEO, and that's one of the big ones is that, when you're submitting somebody that it does have higher hazard classes or some struggles in the past, getting loss control involved and telling the story of the business. That's really important. If you can go out and someone from your company can see that, yes, they've had these struggles with these classes, or even if it's just an industry that the PEO isn't necessarily interested in writing, but they go the step further to get on the ground and show that this is going to be a safe business and a profitable business, it goes a long way. It goes a long way that the business owner is willing to have loss control come out and look at the job site and interact with their employees. It shows that they're confident in what they're doing to keep their employees safe. And so that goes a long way with the underwriter as well. When you can't get on or can't get the owner on to have these discussions when you're dealing with high-risk exposures, then it gives the underwriter sort of a bad feeling. And they're less likely to take chances on a company that otherwise would have gotten the coverage if they'd have just cooperated with the loss control and shown the effort that they put forth for risk management.
Yeah, we talked a lot about this with David back in January, and I call it painting the Picasso, right? Because at the end of the day, you know, there's just a lot more flexibility with PEO underwriting versus
Absolutely.
standard market. And, you know, any claim over 25,000, you get a narrative, you know, a couple of sentences on what happened, a couple sentences on what that business owner has done to prevent that type of claim from happening again. It goes miles,
Absolutely.
especially when you start getting into, you know, we call it hazard codes, riskier business, whatever, water exposures, height exposures, you know, underwater welding, you know. You guys want that one?
Absolutely.
You know, it's I wish more, you know, brokers and agents would take that model. You know, largely PEO advisors, all we do is partner with P&C agents all over the country, and we help with, you know, distressed workers' comp. And there's a lot of ways to angle the PEO business. We had the PEO lady in here a few months back, and her whole niche is angling through benefits. You know, where
Absolutely.
in 22 years, we've literally written 2 group health plans at the time of sign up ever. You know, so we are strictly distress comp. And so many, I mean, thousands of those accords come in. That's the app for insurance, and literally just say construction, roofing. It blows my mind that the standard market literally just takes the codes and the remuneration, the payroll at face value, with very to little no Picasso work, you know, and painting the picture is key. It really is.
Yep. Give the description. What do they do? How do they do it? What are they using to do it? You know, if we just see a roofer that does high rises, and that's all we have, they're a roofer that does high rises, some people aren't going to take the chance on that. But if you explain he's a roofer that does high rises, this is his safety program, we went and visited the loss, here are the site, here are the pictures, you know, that business is more likely to get a yes. And then the continued support of both the PEO and the carrier for as long as they're under contract with the PEO. Because again, now they have all of these businesses that are vested in the success of this business.
Sure. Were you going to throw something in there?
Yeah, there's a story to be told with every account, and a lot of people will say loss control is sales prevention,
Yeah.
and I think it's just the opposite in my experience over the years. People embrace somebody coming out to help them, and you know you can't find that anywhere else. A lot of the larger carriers just aren't providing loss control anymore. They cut those guys out, or it's fee for service. So when you're getting a safety professional coming out and helping you, that's a bonus of being with a PEO. You know, I've looked at accounts where you walk in the door and you think, oh, this is going to be a disaster based on the submission that was given, and it's just the opposite. And going out there and seeing it, you're going, you know what, this is going to be okay. This is all right. This guy gets it. He knows he had some problems, but he's doing the right things. And you find way more of those than you do. Now, there's occasionally times you think you're going out to see a drywaller and they're up doing roofing and you're like, okay, this is not what you signed up. So it's good in that regard as well. But you get to see them in action and you get to see them and you say, you know, it's not that bad.
It can turn a no into a yes.
Sure, in a big way. And although we just look at it as common sense, I mean, of course, disclose the max height, the average height, the max travel distance, the average travel distance. So few just don't take it to those lengths. But when you do, you know, we get very few declinations, really. And, you know, and there's a lot of ways to broker this industry, right? And PEO Advisors really is not the kind of brokerage that signs up with every PEO offering a contract. You know, there's nearly 500 of them throughout the country. We're working with about a dozen. And really, because so many of these, you know, at the end of the day, a PEO is what it is, but it has to partner with a carrier. And so many carriers have this very small box of underwriting, you know, 2 stories or less, 1.25 mod or less, you know, won't do roofing, won't do trees. I have that product so many places. And that's what I love about Suns, and really why I call them kind of the premier carriers. You've continued to take the risk at a good price, look at stuff, you know, honestly underwrite it with some common sense, you know, and it's been a good little marriage. I mean, it's not by accident. You guys are my favorite carrier, and I love having you on the show. So, but let's talk about that from really a risk management program. I mean, are you able to customize these things, or is it just everyone gets the same vanilla offering? What's that really look like?
Well, you know, every operation is different, so you really have to customize your safety program to what your operation is. And that's the beauty of the Risk Management Center. You can go in there and you can pull over 3,000 documents, and most of them are in Word, and they're all usable for downloading and executing on your own. Now, there are certain elements of a safety program that you're probably going to need some help. You may not know how to create a lockout tagout program, or you may not know how to do a confined space entry plan. But if you just want a ladder program, you're a simple contractor, let's look at a small guy who wants to move up in the world and he wants to start working with some big GCs. And the first thing they're going to ask is send us over your safety program. And I've had people call me and go, I need a safety program. And it's like, okay, let's put one together that fits your operation. No, just send me one, and then I'll never talk to you again. And we're like, that's really not how it works. You're going to get busted if you just send in a template and it's got to put your name here on it. And they've done that. And so, but if you take the time and put yourself together a really nice safety program, you're going to do a couple of things. You're going to move your company to another level. You're going to show your employees that you care, and you're going to hold your managers accountable. And that's the framework for injury prevention.
Yeah, it goes a long way. It's not as simple as, just the regulations of an employee handbook, right? I mean, it really does kind of mold to what you're doing. And even roofing, all things are not created equal, right? Are you doing the hot tar? Are you doing torching? I mean, you've got to kind of peel that onion to that next level. It's got to be tough with some of these business owners. They don't quite get it, and you onboard with the PEO and they do so much heavy lifting and they take all these things off your plate. I think there's just almost an assumption this will be that too. But that's where, kind of putting your arms around this thing and really molding it, and helping them. And again, I think it makes selling the PEO process that much easier if they really understand it. Some business owners have been out there 15 years and they've never seen OSHA, 40 years, never seen OSHA. And then others see them every 3 months. And I feel like once you kind of get on their radar, they're going to kind of do that follow-up. And this finally goes the same way. If you're having a frequency issue with claims or severity issue with claims, I mean, that skeleton in the closet is something's amiss. Is it training? Are they not doing proper protocols? I mean, where are they missing? And so, the PEO can help you. That old line, bring the horse to the water, but you can't make it drink out of the trough. I mean, so, it's got to be challenging at times with some of the business owners.
I've had companies call me and they go, OSHA's here, what should I do? And I'm like, yeah, you should have called me a month ago and listened to when we said put all this stuff in place. Right now, just good luck, because if he's there, don't turn him away, because he'll come back mad as a hornet. But it's, there's some proactive things you can do to show goodwill in safety. And if you're making an attempt, then you're going to get a lot of credit for that. If you're not making an attempt, you don't have anything documented, and you have a pretty hazardous type work site, you could get busted. But the other thing about OSHA is that's really not the concern. You want to do the right thing. I looked up years ago at what the statistics are on OSHA, and they said if they inspected every employer, it would take them 265 years to do it.
Wow.
So I looked that up a couple months ago, and it's basically the same number. So they haven't ramped up, their inspections, and they do tend to hit the bigger, high-profile jobs. So if you're a sub on a OSIP program or something, there's a good chance you might see OSHA. But if you're just a run-of-the-mill guy out there, unless there's a complaint or unless you have a fatality, you're probably not going to see OSHA. But I always say that's not the point. Do it for the right reasons and make sure your guys get home at night safe and sound.
Yeah.
And you mentioned once OSHA comes, they come back. And they come back harder each time. So when you get your violations and then you get your repeat violations, I looked at a roofing company one time that was just supposed to be a name change of an existing roofer, and it just didn't seem right. We looked at them, and the existing roofer had just been hit with 18 violations by OSHA. They were all repeat serious. He had a 12-year history with OSHA, and his most recent fine just for those 18 was $1.8 million. So just him ignoring what's being said over and over, and this is with falls from roofs and employees slip, just by ignoring that offer and that intent for loss control, in addition to the fact that he's going to lose his coverage, he now has an additional $1.8 million that he owes OSHA. All because he wouldn't follow the program that was available to him. So it comes back in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, who's got the money for that? I mean,
Exactly.
It's literally, it buries you.
How
And
can you compete?
Yeah. In one of my very first years in the business, back when I was writing with ACC, I had come across a gentleman that was doing structural welding, and he had never had workers' comp before. How he was getting on these jobs, I have no idea. Now, I have an idea that, California, Texas, Florida, 3 most fraudulent states in America, maybe he was falsifying a cert, but his take on that was, well, I've got 50 grand in an escrow account, and if I ever have an injury, I've got this 50 put away. And I'm like, man, I mean, that's an ambulance ride and one night
That's
stay.
not
in the
enough,
hospital.
yeah.
Our first year together, $360,000 in claims. So did I curse him or did I save his life? I don't really know, but I guess he'll be the judge of that. And to this day, still have him. Believe it or not, he's been a very loyal. So we've got just a couple of minutes, guys. I want to throw this out there. So, and not to put you on the spot, but if you had any advice for a business owner that's listening, this is a business talk station. There's lots of entrepreneurs in the Tampa Bay area that have caught this hour. Give them a couple of tips. What would you say your 3 biggest tips going down this path from a risk management mitigation standpoint?
Well, the resources are out there. You just got to look for them. And then what you can't do is be everything for everybody. And I think a lot of I spoke with someone today in a consultation, and they try to wear too many hats as a business owner. I think you have to learn how to delegate. So if you have a senior manager, maybe an ex-military guy, I love those military guys. They know about structure and they know about putting plans and programs together. They'll put a safety program together for you. Let them do that and make it part of their, responsibility. So, one, have the right attitude and say, I'm going to make a change. I'm going to be safe. 2, don't try and do it all yourself. Delegate. And then 3, get the resources that are out there and filter them in, and you'll be fine.
That's awesome. You got anything to add there, Mary?
No, I was going to say buy into it. Take advantage of what's available through the PEOs, just really buy into it.
Yeah. We did a whole Women of Impact Now series in the month of March, Women History Month, and it was a 5-week month, so we brought 5, strong entrepreneurial women, the whole month. And I would say that was the biggest kind of reoccurring theme is know what you know what you don't be afraid to delegate. And I think in the world of reels and, coaching, and, I never really went down the path of business coaching until just a couple of years ago. It kind of hit my radar and I've enjoyed it. And that's, oftentimes some of the biggest advice, millionaires and billionaires are giving is stay in your element and don't be afraid to delegate. So I think that's a true one-off in risk.
And there's another thing is don't assume that your employees know what they're supposed to be doing.
Absolutely.
A lot of people will say, well, he should have known better. Well, no, actually, he shouldn't. If you didn't tell him and teach him and train him, then he doesn't know.
There you go.
Yeah. And that has to be a regular, reoccurring theme within a company. You cannot overtrain or overteach or overcoach an employee, especially if they're new.
We had a site visit for an account just go bonkers last month, and the owner wasn't there and just had one of his employees walk the carrier's inspector around. And how often do you guys train? Oh, he doesn't train us. One of the guys was walking around in sandals. I mean, there was no coming back from that one. I've only failed 2 or 3 site visits in 22 years, and this one was, obviously an F on the report card, but it was tough to hear. So, well, listen, I've had so much fun. Pretty excited. In just a few weeks, we've got next level administrators coming back,
Heidi
right?
and Carrie will be here.
That'll be awesome. I'll teach you kind of everything going through claims and all of the above. Next week, we've got Lionel Francis coming in the studio, kind of doing a cameo call. He was co-host on the show for the first 40 weeks, so he's going to come in. He's been with Southeast Personnel for going on 19 years. Just a real juggernaut in the industry. So it'll be great to get him back in the studio. Chris, Meredith, thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
These seats are always open to you, and it's really been awesome having you in here. So, Wes, Eric, Aaron, the long-awaited return has finally come. Listeners, viewers, thank you so much. You know how this show ends. Love God, be kind to your PEO, enjoy your staff, and know we're on a 167-hour break.
You've been listening to Everything PEO, where as another lesson comes to a close, another business gets smarter. Tune in next Wednesday at 6 p.m. so they can add your company to their satisfied group of savvy business graduates. Everything PEO.